Have you ever felt that life is a constant battle where moments of joy are just short pauses before the next fall? Arthur Schopenhauer, one of the darkest philosophers in history, believed exactly that. For him, life isn't a fairy tale, it's suffering, and ignoring this reality only makes us more vulnerable. His writings remain relevant today because they challenge our illusion of happiness and force us to see the world as it really is. But far from being just pessimism, his reflections offer something valuable, the understanding needed to face the harsh reality of existence. In this video, we'll explore 9 brutal reflections by Schopenhauer that could change the way you look at life. Some of them may seem harsh, but they all carry essential truths for anyone who wants to find meaning in the midst of chaos. Suffering is inevitable. Most people spend their entire lives trying to avoid suffering. We seek comfort, we seek pleasure, and we run away from pain whenever possible. But for Schopenhauer, this attempt is futile because suffering is not an accident of life. It is the very essence of existence. According to him, nature created us to fight constantly. If we're not fighting illness, we're facing frustration, disappointment, and loss. And even when everything seems fine, anxiety about the future or memories of the past torment us. This is because life is an endless cycle of desire and frustration. Schopenhauer said that as long as we are alive, there will always be something we lack. If we're sick, we want health. If we're healthy, we want money. If we have money, we want love. If we have love, we want freedom. And so we go on unsatisfied, driven by a desire that can never be fully satisfied. So what can we do in the face of this reality? Accept. It doesn't mean settling for pain, but understanding that it is inevitable and stopping living in the illusion that one day everything will be perfect. The sooner we understand this truth, the less we suffer from unrealistic expectations. Desire is a trap. Have you ever noticed how we're always running after something? Money, success, love, recognition. It seems that when we get what we want, happiness will finally arrive. But Schopenhauer warns us, this race is an illusion. For him, desire is like a flame that never goes out. When we achieve a goal, we feel a brief sense of satisfaction, but then we are consumed by a new desire. This endless cycle keeps us eternally dissatisfied. And worse, the more we desire, the more we suffer. Imagine someone who dreams of becoming rich. He believes that having money will give him peace. But when he finally achieves his fortune, he finds that he still feels empty. Now he wants more. He wants status, he wants power, he wants something he doesn't have yet. And so his happiness never arrives. Schopenhauer called this the cycle of wanting, where life is about wanting, striving, conquering, and in the end, feeling dissatisfied again. True freedom does not lie in having everything you want, but in learning to want less. Happiness is a passing illusion. We live in a society obsessed with happiness. Books, courses, gurus, all promise formulas for achieving a state of permanent joy. But Schopenhauer destroys this illusion with a brutal truth. Happiness, when it happens, is just a pause between two sufferings. For him, life is marked by constant pain, worries, losses, illnesses, and frustrations. When we get a moment of joy, it soon disappears, and we are once again consumed by dissatisfaction or the fear of losing what we have. Schopenhauer uses an interesting metaphor. Happiness is like a soap bubble. It looks beautiful and perfect for a moment, but it quickly bursts, leaving nothing but emptiness. The problem is not feeling pleasure or seeking happy moments, but believing that we can live in this state forever. When we accept that happiness is brief, we stop being frustrated by its absence and begin to value the little moments that really matter. Loneliness is the way of the intelligent man. Most people fear loneliness. Being alone is seen as a sign of social failure, as if it meant that something was wrong with you. But Schopenhauer thought exactly the opposite. For him, the more intelligent a man is, the more he values solitude. This is because most social interaction is superficial, full of vanity, envy, and empty talk. He believed that those who seek truth and self-knowledge inevitably move away from the crowd. After all, it is in silence that we can reflect on life, develop ideas, and truly become masters of ourselves. But Schopenhauer didn't advocate absolute isolation. He knew that we need some relationships, but warned that relying too much on people can lead to disappointment. Human nature is selfish, and we often expect more from others than they can offer. Therefore, according to him, true peace comes when we learn to appreciate our own company. Being able to be alone without needing constant validation from others is a sign of strength and maturity. Love is just a deception of nature. From an early age, we are taught to see love as something sublime, a force that gives meaning to life. Films, songs, and books reinforce the idea that finding a soulmate is the key to happiness. But Schopenhauer destroys this illusion with a brutal thesis. Love is nothing more than a biological trick of nature to ensure the reproduction of the species. For him, what we call love is just an irrational impulse, an illusion created by our instincts. We don't seek out a partner because we want companionship or emotional connection. We seek it out because we are programmed to do so. The intense desire we feel at the beginning of a relationship disappears when the biological function of love is fulfilled. And that's why so many people suffer in love. They believe that this feeling is eternal, but over time, the passion wears off and reality sets in. The partner who once seemed perfect now has annoying flaws, and what once brought happiness can become a burden. Schopenhauer said that if we want to avoid unnecessary suffering, we should approach love with more rationality and less fantasy. This doesn't mean denying love, but understanding its true nature so as not to fall into the trap of unrealistic expectations. Money can't buy true satisfaction. And many people believe that money is the answer to all their problems. Society teaches us that the more wealth we accumulate, the happier we will be. But Schopenhauer warns us money can alleviate some suffering, but it will never bring lasting satisfaction. For him, the incessant search for wealth is just another manifestation of the cycle of desire. Those who are poor dream of being rich, those who are rich want to be richer, and those who have everything still feel that something is missing. This is because money can buy comfort, but it can't fill the existential void. In addition, Schopenhauer saw wealth as a risk to freedom. The more possessions we accumulate, the more we become slaves to them. The fear of losing what we have can be as distressing as poverty itself. He believed that true peace does not come from having a lot of money, but from wanting little. Does this mean that money has no value? No. Schopenhauer recognized that it is necessary for a dignified life, but warned that its obsessive pursuit can turn us into eternal dissatisfiers. The key is not to accumulate wealth, but to learn to live with less and value what really matters. Art and philosophy as refuge. If life is suffering, is there any form of relief? For Schopenhauer, yes. He believed that art and philosophy are the only refuges against the pain of existence. Most of the time, we are trapped in the endless cycle of desire. We want something, we struggle to get it, and when we achieve it, we immediately want something else. But when we appreciate a work of art, listen to profound music, or reflect on philosophical questions, we are able, for a brief moment, to escape this cycle and just contemplate reality. Schopenhauer saw music as the purest form of art. For him, music doesn't just imitate life, it connects us directly with the deepest emotions of existence. When we hear a melody that touches us, we feel a momentary relief from the chaos of life. In the same way, philosophy helps us to see the world more clearly. Instead of falling victim to our impulses, we come to better understand the nature of existence and ourselves. Does this mean that art and philosophy eliminate suffering? No, but they allow us to endure it with more dignity. They are small windows into a higher state of consciousness, where we can, albeit temporarily, escape the misery of life. The world is a hostile place. We believe that people are essentially good and that the world rewards those who do the right thing. But Schopenhauer warns us, human nature is selfish, and the world is a hostile place where goodness is rarely recognized. He argued that each individual is deep down concerned only with themselves. However generous gestures may be, most human relationships are driven by self-interest. The success of one often means the defeat of another. Life is a constant struggle, and society works like a great game of competition where the smartest and strongest get the upper hand. Does this mean we should become cynical and distrust everyone? Not necessarily. Schopenhauer believed that accepting this reality helps us to avoid unnecessary suffering. Expecting too much from others is a sure path to disappointment. The sooner we understand that not everyone is trustworthy, the more protected we will be against betrayals and false promises. That's why, according to him, we should cultivate prudence and emotional independence. This doesn't mean isolating ourselves completely, but rather being aware that no one but ourselves is responsible for our well-being. How to live in a miserable world. If suffering is inevitable, desires imprison us, love is an illusion, and the world is hostile, then how should we live? If we follow Schopenhauer's logic, the answer is simple but difficult to accept. We must abandon our illusions and find a path of resignation and wisdom. For him, the first thing we should do is reduce our expectations. The less we expect from life and people, the less we suffer. This doesn't mean giving up, but stopping believing that there is a magic formula for happiness. Another crucial point is to practice emotional detachment. Don't let yourself be carried away by blind passions, the incessant search for pleasure, or the fear of suffering. The more we detach ourselves from the ups and downs of life, the more we find a kind of inner peace. In addition, Schopenhauer saw contemplation, art, and philosophy as a refuge from despair. When we stop fighting reality and start to understand it, we become less vulnerable to its traps. Finally, he believed that the best way to live was with a wise and solitary spirit, accepting pain without being consumed by it, seeing life as a game where the only real victory is serenity in the face of the inevitable. After all we've seen, an inevitable question may arise: what should we do with these reflections? If life is suffering, desire is a trap, love is an illusion, and the world is hostile, what is the point of continuing to fight? The first answer Schopenhauer gives us is harsh but liberating. Stop living in illusion. Much of our suffering comes from unrealistic expectations about life, people, and ourselves. We expect the world to be fair, love to be eternal, and happiness to be constant. But when we let go of these illusions, a curious thing happens. We become more prepared to face reality. Imagine someone who always expects recognition and gratitude from others. This person is always giving of themselves, always helping, but deep down they feel frustrated because others don't reciprocate in the way they expected. Now imagine that same person understanding that human beings are, by nature, selfish, that most relationships are based on interest. Does this mean that they should become cold and bitter? No, it just means that they stop expecting the impossible and, as a result, stop being so disappointed. Another example. Many people live in search of eternal happiness, believing that one day they will find a stage in life where everything will be solved. But that phase never comes. There's always a problem, a frustration, a new goal to be achieved. When we understand that happiness is just a brief interval between moments of suffering, we stop wasting energy chasing something unattainable and start to value the small moments of peace and contentment that come along the way. What about desire? How do we escape this trap? Schopenhauer teaches us that we will never be completely satisfied, and that the key to a less turbulent life is not to have everything we want, but to want less. Instead of chasing every impulse, we can train our minds to seek out what really has value and brings us serenity. What about love? If it's just a biological trick, does that mean we should reject it? Not necessarily. It just means that we need to see love for what it really is without fantasies. The intense passion that consumes us at the beginning of a relationship doesn't last forever, and that's natural. Instead of deluding ourselves with the idea of perfect, eternal love, we can learn to build more realistic relationships based on respect and partnership, and not just on initial euphoria. Loneliness, which so many fear, can be a great ally. How many times have you felt alone in a crowd? How many times have you had to pretend to be someone you're not in order to fit in? For Schopenhauer, the more intelligent and reflective a man is, the more he distances himself from the mediocrity of the world. It doesn't mean living in isolation, but learning to appreciate one's own company, to seek wisdom in silence and to avoid depending on others to feel good. Art and philosophy, which he considered the only true refuges, are tools that anyone can use. When we read a great book, listen to music that moves us, or reflect on profound ideas, we are able to escape, even for a brief moment, from the misery of life. These little moments of contemplation are what allow us to bear the weight of existence, and at the end of it all, what are we left with? Serenity, not utopian happiness, not infinite wealth, not idealized love, but the ability to see the world as it really is and still move on without despair, without destructive illusions. Life may be hard, but that doesn't mean it has no value. When we stop running away from pain and learn to accept it, we find a different kind of freedom. A freedom that doesn't come from the illusion of control, but from the deep understanding that the only thing we can really master is our own mind. And now I ask you, how do you see your life after these reflections? Could it be that part of your suffering comes from the expectations you've created for yourself? Leave your opinion in the comments. Share this video with someone who needs to hear these truths, and if you're not already subscribed to the channel, do so now for more reflections like this one.